September 9th, 2022 Public Clemency Board meeting. The first part of this meeting will be open to the public, and the second section will be closed to the public pursuant to DC Municipal Regulation 703.7 subsection B. Before we begin, I want to provide a reminder about a few housekeeping rules for the meeting. First, please make sure that your microphones are muted when you're not speaking. If you have any questions, please hold them. We'll have a period for questions. However, feel free to take advantage of the chat function to send questions in, and we will happily address them during the question and answer portion of the meeting. Now I'd like to take attendance of the board members present so we can make sure we have a quorum to proceed. I will call the names of the board members, so please let me know if you are here by signifying yes. Elisa Carter.
Yes.
Emily Gunston.
Yes.
Sonia Weil.
Yes.
Katya Semyonova.
Yes.
And Ilana Suttenberg.
Here.
Great. We have the needed 5 members plus to reach a quorum and proceed with the meeting. So on the agenda for today, with respect to old business, we have the continued review of the Clemency Board operating guidelines to discuss the conflicts check process for the board. The meeting today is scheduled to run for an hour. If the meeting runs long, I'll check in with board members to see if you can remain available. And if it runs short, we'll proceed directly to the closed meeting. So I'll now turn it over to our staff director, Christina Sacco, to continue the review of the operating guidelines. We'll take questions on the operating guidelines after the review. We just ask that the public hold their questions until the end. And we do welcome the public, and in particular, Professor Moyd, for being present today. Christina?
Good afternoon, everyone. Great to see you all. I hope you had a great August, and we're kicking off September with a nice bang conflicts review process. So we sent around the edits for the conflicts procedures, and hopefully you've all had an opportunity to review it. If you haven't, I will share my screen so you can have it in front of you. But just a little bit of background, we had finalized the operating guidelines at our last meeting. However, in the process of discussing the application before the board, we realized that a conflicts process needs to be established and implemented into the operating guidelines. So great catch on that, Katya. So we have added it in and figured we could all just collaborate on discussing whether the process added in works for the board or whether or not additional modifications need to be made. So I'm just going to share my screen with the red line edits. 1 second. All right. Can everyone see my screen? Great. Awesome. So just make this a little bit bigger. All right. So the way the conflicts check process will work right now is that once an application has been deemed complete, that is when we would run conflicts. That's what's been put into place. However, I think we can, the reason why this is put in until the application is deemed complete is so that we can know that the application can move forward. So once that has been deemed, the application is deemed complete and eligible, then we can run a conflicts check on whether any board members have particular conflicts. So the conflicts check process currently was shared by a secure document, which we shared with you all. My recommendation is to use a platform that's much more secure. So I've created Box accounts for all of you. We can discuss Box at a later time, and if no one's familiar with it, I'm happy to walk each board member through Box. But the way it would work is once an applicant is deemed complete and eligible, I'll put just the necessary information to run a conflicts check in the Box account. And instead of sending an applicant's information via email, I would just send an email to board members to please log into their Box account to retrieve the necessary information to run conflicts. That way you don't have to get access to a document. It's always going to be there. And also, personally, protected information would not need to travel across email. So that's one of the reasons why I really like Box as opposed to Google Drive and so forth, because then we have, login information difficulties and just having to, if you're FOIA, having to be able to like neutralize a link or so forth. So I think that's my main concern with utilizing any type of links. So board members, upon notification, will have two weeks to run a conflicts check. And then inform me, the staff director, or any board member, or Patrick, of any conflicts. And so if there is a conflict with an application, that board member will not be permitted to participate in the evaluation of the application. So question to the board here is, when a conflict arises, we're not entirely sure what your ethical policies are and procedures within each organization. Just a little bit of clarity for your organization. If there is a conflict, is the conflict because you're directly involved and cannot participate, or is it someone in your organization is directly involved and the whole organization is thus conflicted out? Or is there a way of creating some sort of like an absolute barrier where information cannot be disclosed? So kind of creating a wall where you can protect confidentiality and assure against conflicts. So with that summary, turning over to the board for any questions, concerns, and some context on your side.
Yeah, thanks for that, Christina. I just wanted to start off by saying, first of all, thank you for everything that everyone's done to get to this point. Secondly, when we were created as a board, I think the council and the mayor agreed that we would have representation from all of these different organizations. And now we've even pushed to expand that to include someone with victims experience and someone who is a returning citizen themselves. And I think that the wisdom behind that was that the input of every individual on this board is important and was valued enough that there would be a designated member for you. And so with that, what I'm concerned about, and I think what Christina has just raised, is we have a very intentional composition as a board, and that's to reflect a wide variety of perspectives in making these decisions. And so to the extent that you can limit the conflict, it would be really appreciated, because we want your voice in the conversation. So with that, I'll open it to members to sort of make any statements they want to.
So this is Emily. I certainly understand the tension here. I think at this point, all I can say is that I am working it through with our ethics council to determine sort of what our obligations are with regard to, right, there's a number of different ways for OAG a conflict could arise. One, for example, is we could have actually been the agency that moved to transfer the particular matter to adult court that the person is seeking clemency for. That would be the most direct. Others could be if we had prosecuted a prior either juvenile matter or adult matter, although because those are quite minor offenses for which we have authority, it's probably less likely there. But the question is whether or not the conduct involved in an earlier matter is considered by the board to determine whether or not the person should be determined should get clemency. And on that, I think I need to think through also, and I want to work with PDS in my own office to understand what information from those prior juvenile prosecutions folks might have access to see whether or not it would be part of the consideration in determining clemency. So it's not an answer to your question, Patrick. I'm just letting you know sort of what I've been thinking through about what are the possible scenarios here, and then whether or not a wall can be created or if our entire office is conflicted off. And I am working with our ethics council to determine the answer to that.
Thanks for that.
Similarly, for PDS, we're going to have decisions that are made based on the rules of professional responsibility, and that the conflicts, the lawyers who work on conflicts at our office will weigh in on them. And then there's also the issue of I don't know if walling off would work, but there's also the issue of client consent. In some instances where there may be more flexibility within the rules, there would still be issues sometimes of the permission, getting the permission of the client. So it's potentially more complicated as well. These guidelines don't address the conflict process, but the others do. Right? Not the process, but the sort of the things that create a conflict. So it's sort of going deeper into those to see whether there are ways to kind of cabin those conflicts, right?
That's correct. I think what the difficulty with marrying all of that in the operating guidelines is that each organization has different policies and procedures ethically that applies to them. So it'd be very hard to create one that applies only to the board, but it differs internally. So we would defer to your organizations and your ethics councils for the conflicts checks process. But I think the idea is we would love to have the participation of all the organizations that are listed in the Clemency Act in the review of an application. But I think we would like to know what the threshold is for a conflicts.
Are there other comments from board members?
Hi, it's Sonia. I'm also similarly trying to get in touch with our ethics advisor just to work through what potential conflicts could be for us, but I don't really see it arising that often. Like, we're not like PDS and OEG that we don't have clients and we haven't represented people. So I don't foresee it really being an issue for us, but I am working on getting just like more basic information about what might be a scenario that would come up. Like, I can't really think of any, to be honest, but so I don't foresee it being a big issue on my end.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, this is Felisa. For me, yeah, it's I don't see it being a big issue. I mean, the only scenario I can come up with in my instance is that maybe if I knew the person from the community, I don't know how deep that relationship has to go. I don't know if it's like business wise or maybe knew them in like a personal capacity. I guess I don't know. I don't know if I would check in with the mayor's office about that. They're ethics compliance people, but or with Christina. But yeah, that's the only instance I can think of in my case for now. But yeah, I don't see it being a huge problem, but we'll see going forward.
Thank you.
Any concerns on your end?
Yeah, so I have a weird history because I worked in DC government and I am a psychologist, so I'm bound by the ethics of my profession, to protect the identity of individuals, that sort of thing. But also, as a former government senior official, I have potential conflicts, which I think are completely mitigated at this point. It's at least I've been out of the government for 7 years, so I will check with Vega on that though, just to ensure that I'm not running afoul of anything and certainly not harming anybody. So that would be my question. I see very little conflict at this point.
Great, thank you all. Just to loop back in on all of this, so based on the way the procedures are written in right now for the operating guidelines, just keeping them very general, would it make sense when board members run a conflicts check and if a conflicts does arise, for that information to be put into Box? So it would be an Excel spreadsheet be put into box with the date saying we ran a conflicts check and we're conflicted out, and then provide the reasoning for conflicts? Would that be too much to ask?
I don't think the reasoning necessarily is appropriate for us to provide that.
It's the same from OAGs. I think it does make a lot of sense, Christina, to make sure that there's a record of the fact that a particular agency or person, however we're handling it, is conflicted out, so that it's very clear to everyone that a conflict was not, people didn't violate conflict rules or professional responsibility rules. But I also agree with Katya that in most cases, it probably would violate the rules for us to give the reasoning.
Okay. All right. Well, in that case, do board members have concerns with the step 3, the procedures put in step 3?
Well, for me, I imagine I have to do a lot of this deep work right now, to check with the ethics officer and all that sort of stuff. But I would assume that the next time it's easier and quicker. So I don't think 2 weeks is unreasonable at that point for myself.
That works for PDS also. I don't read 3 to be that we have to state the reason for the conflict. It's just conflict, yes or no. I think this is totally maybe unnecessary, but in section 1, it could be just a little bit, I feel like section 1 is a little bit unclear with the information necessary for the regarding the applicant for each board member to conduct a conflict check. It could just be a little bit like worded that what the information is being provided is related to the conflict check. Do you know what I mean? It's really, it might just be like overly picky.
So you mean by number 2 over here, the information necessary for the conflict
And
check?
just using that language in number 1 also. Will provide board members with the information necessary for each board member to conduct a conflict check. Or regarding the applicant.
Mhm.
Thank you. Yeah.
Sure.
And just to be clear, that information will essentially be basic identifying information, right?
Correct. Any additional concerns for edits?
Yeah. Any other edits back to the text now? First of all, thanks for jumping in on that conversation. Any edits further?
Okay. And then just made a couple of additional edits here to tighten up the language. That also within 2 weeks of finding the application complete and eligible, the staff director will support the executive assistant for to send out the releases. Just clearing it up.
Anything further in that section 43 or 4, I mean, step 4? I don't see the whole text.
And applicant. I think this should say eligible applicant. I'm just reading it. Okay. If no concerns, those are the only edits other than the changes in the number that were made to the guidelines. So if board members are okay with these step 3 edits, they weren't made, none were made on the above, I'm happy to run through the whole thing if necessary. Do board members feel comfortable to finalize operating guidelines?
This is Emily. I do, Christina. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily. Okay, turn it over to you, Patrick, then.
So is there a motion to finalize the operating guidelines as amended today?
So moved.
Second,
Seconded.
discussion. Anybody have any final discussion you want to make before we go ahead and vote? Discussion? Discussion. Okay, that's 3 times. All those in favor of accepting the guidelines as amended today, say aye.
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 Okay, those opposed? Any abstaining?
Abstain, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, motion passes. The operating guidelines are accepted. Wow. Fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for that. And I trust we'll be able to hear back, shortly. If there's any, I'd love to hear from members directly if there's, if you feel like there's information to be shared around what your ethical obligations would be, just so we can start to understand. Here's how it could apply for folks. So I appreciate that. Okay, second item of business today is the Clemency Board Access to Justice. I'm really happy to report and very grateful to our staff director that the DC Criminal Justice Coordinating Council has granted the Clemency Board access to justice, its information sharing portal. So the Clemency Board will be able to pull background information on applicants so long as required ROIs have been signed by the applicant. The staff director will be responsible for accessing material through justice from the Clemency Board review in its consideration of Clemency Board applications. This will actually, there will be a brief training. I think most members of the board are already familiar with our obligations under the confidentiality agreements that that I will sign on behalf of the board regarding our responsibilities to safeguard any information that comes from there. So really happy to report that progress, and it gives us a significant background. Does any board member have questions on that? Okay.
I'm
Patrick,
sorry.
what was the name of the group again?
Pardon me?
Which group did we just get access to the information? I didn't hear. I'm sorry.
Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, CJCC. And they have the kind of like consolidated information.
Patrick, this is Emily. I do have one question, and this might be a question that I need to ask of CJCC folks. Do you know whether or not the access that we will have as board members is unrestricted? I ask that just because there's a lot of juvenile confidentiality information in justice, and there's law around with whom we are allowed to share that information.
I'll deflect that question to Christina. She's the one who's chaptered and versed that agreement 100 times. So, Christina.
Thanks, Emily. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Because justice has a wealth of information, we're not allowed access to everything. So the only person who will actually have access to CJCC will be me, and I'm only allowed viewing access. And the access that I'm allowed to are only certain documents that are pulled from the Superior Court. So not from BOP or CISO. So we get those from those direct agencies. The reason why we even got justice is so it would be a burden on the Superior Court to process these requests for releases. So what CJCC did is had conversations with CISO, MPD, and everybody who contributes to CJCC about whether or not they're okay with giving the Clemency Board access to these particular documents. And those particular documents are the documents listed on the release under the Superior Court. So it's just those documents, and we're only allowed viewing authority.
That makes a lot of sense, Christina. Do you mind just sending me the MOU just because OAG is also a contributing agency and it could be that somebody in my agency has already reviewed it, but I just want to make sure.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And Christina, do you know, is it just public documents? I assume it's not sealed documents from Superior Court?
That's correct. Yes.
So essentially it's just public Superior Court documents that will
That's
justice
correct.
will
Yes.
take that. Great, thank you.
Yes. You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions about the CJCC data? Okay, hearing none. Okay, next on our agenda is new business. I'm not sure if any board member has new business, any announcements anyone would like to make.
Hi, Patrick. I will announce that we are moving forward with the 3 board nominees next week. We're marking them up next Friday, so they should then they go to the full council and should become law in the next few weeks. So hopefully we can get the new board members, or 2 new board members, 1 current board member shifting seats, Felisa. So that is my news. Very exciting.
It is indeed very exciting. Thank you. Perfect timing. Really appreciate that. Is there a way the public would be able to participate in that meeting? Do you want to advertise that in any way here?
Sure. Yeah, it will be on Zoom, so it can be viewed on the council website or on, I believe it'll be on Councilmember Allen's Facebook. He usually puts them there. But I can send the notice around also if people want that so that they can share it.
That would be great. That's really great news. You know, part of my concern earlier about if people have to be disqualified from participating in deliberations will be ameliorated a little bit by having a full board with fully able to vote members. So that's great. So thank you. Appreciate it. Any other new business? Okay, hearing none. So time for public comments. We have a single member of the public here, Professor Olinda Moyd. Professor, anything you wanted to add today?
I have no additional comments today other than to say it's great to know that you guys are actually considering applicants. It's like really exciting. I made that announcement at a CCE board meeting last night, and folks were excited to know that the Clemency Board is at this stage. So I have no other comments. Thank you.
Thank you for sticking with us through this whole process and far earlier than this current process, Professor. Thank you. Okay, with that, if there's no other new business, is there a motion to adjourn?
I have only one announcement, Patrick. This is Felisa. Maybe I should have brought this up on their old business.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to let the committee know and the public, Professor Moy. I attended a community event on behalf of the Clemency Board on August 20th. I went out and with the gracious help of Christina and their team, Lisa helped also, gave me pamphlets so I could hand out to people at the community event. It was more like a kind of a back to school startup for friends and families of incarcerated people. So I had my pamphlets, and I was able to stay out there for about an hour or so to kind of just talk to the people who were there, hand out pamphlets to people. We still have a lot of work to do to get the word out about the existence of the Clemency Board with, lay people. But we're trying to get the word out there. So I did that, and then I did that August 20th. And also I put, I'm going to go and talk to Courtney Stewart's group, the National Returning, and then the Reentry Network. So, and I think like the last week of September, I'm going to talk to their group and with the talking points that Christina provided us about Clemency Board and try to answer their questions. And if not, I'll definitely refer them to Patrick and Christina if I can't answer any questions about our progress as a Clemency Board.
Thank you so much for reporting on that and reminding us all of our the important role that community engagement is going to play in our success. To the extent that the community knows about this board and can assist people in producing applications for us, that's really where it goes. Thank you so much for doing that in the middle of August too. It's not easy to do. I know Christina she's starting to keep a regular schedule of events that some of us may be able to attend. So you may hear Christina and I knocking on your door asking if you would, represent the Clemency Board at one of those public hearings. So Felisa, thank you for taking the lead and doing that already. Thank you. It's great. I forgot before we adjourn, I just want to set a placeholder meeting for 1 month, about a month out. That may be just for a closed meeting, just in case we need that. I want to just announce that in public. And I was actually looking at a date of October 14th for a potential closed meeting. I believe 10 a.m. is preferred. And if you could just indicate with the thumbs up that it works for you. Friday, October 14th, 10 a.m. See, Sonia, it works.
And will that be open and closed or just closed? Either's fine. I was curious if I needed to attend.
Let's say both.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Patrick, this is Emily. I have a regularly scheduled Friday meeting at 10 a.m.
Okay.
So 10:30 would be better for me if it's available.
Anybody not able to? Can we do 10:30 on the 14th? Okay. I'm seeing most heads shaking yes, so we'll go ahead and plan that as our next open and or closed meeting. The if for some reason we do not need that meeting, Christina will notify us that, and we'll cancel any public, the publishing of the notice. I just want to have
To
it
be
in place.
clear on my end, sorry, just to make sure we have it on our end, do you want both a open and closed meeting? Those would require 2 separate notices, or are we holding just a closed meeting on the 14th?
Again, I'm just trying to have as much flexibility depending on what we need, depending on what people are going to hear from the ethics attorney, any of that kind of stuff. If we need another open meeting, I'd like to have it scheduled. It can be a half-hour meeting, and then schedule the closed meeting, which is really the work I hope we're doing.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. I'm just trying to give the board as much flexibility as we can to get going.
Great. Yeah, sure.
Okay. It looks like that's all of the information. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Second?
Seconded.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, we're done. Thank you all so much. We're going to now move to our closed Clemency Board meeting.